All right. Well, welcome everybody to one more episode of Talking Points with Capstone. I'm Dr. Sujaya Banerjee and I lead the Capstone People Consulting organization. Talking Points is one of our platforms to be able to invite industry leaders and thought leaders and authors and other people who are contributing sort of significantly to the area of making the workplace better. And we basically invite them to be able to partake in the conversations that we have through Talking Points. Um, our guest today is an extremely well known, iconic person, and I would like to really introduce him as the legendary Dr. T V Rao, who is joining us in a conversation today. And I think what is amazing is that, the topic that we have today, we couldn't have got a better person to participate in terms of being able to contribute to this growing challenge that we're seeing within workplaces. And I'll share some data with you in just a bit. But just to kind of give you a perspective, for those of you, who've heard of TV Rao but don't know enough about him, is that this is easily, HR's most iconic, legendary pioneer who's done absolutely outstanding work in the space of HR, popularized the term human resources development. He is currently leading the TV Rao Learning System organization in IM, and has also been part of the IM Ahmedabad organization as a visiting professor. David McLennan of Harvard, has been, someone that Dr. Rao has worked closely with as he brought very many pioneering ideas to India. His global consulting has been one of the foremost people to be able to consult globally, leading organizations and leading, sort of institutions like the UNESCO and the UNIDO and the UNICEF and so on. Dr. Rao has, I know this is a continuing number, but, the current number appears to be 62 books and publications that are sort of very vividly, sort of positioned as part of his Wikipedia. And I recommend very strongly, particularly for the younger generation, including those who are also in senior positions, to be able to access Dr. TV Rao's books. I have no qualms about saying that at least the HR professionals my generation really grew up learning HR and HRD through the eyes of Dr. TV Rao and Uday Parekh. And I think this is absolutely a fabulous opportunity to be able to get his perspective on current times today. So basically, he's an educator, he's an entrepreneur, he does work in the space of health and population. HRD, as I said, is something that he kind of coined so many years ago, tremendous contribution to OB and OD, and also to institutions and to businesses. He has been awarded, needless to say, by many institutions, and I'm calling him legendary again because of the absolutely fabulous contribution to the profession. I couldn't think of anyone better than Dr. Rao to be able to have this conversation with, and we're really fortuitous that he agreed to be able to come and have this conversation with us. For those of you joining us on LinkedIn Live, very warm welcome to all of you. I'm delighted that you found time on a Friday ahead of Diwali to be able to join us on this conversation. Of course, we have, the very erudite Visti Banaji who's joining us here on Zoom. So, I'm going to, Dr. Rao, bring you into the conversation by, sort of highlighting some of the more recent findings. This is the State of Global Workplace 2025 Gallup's report. This came out in June, in some publications early July this year, 2025. And here's the top lines of this very credible survey. It talks about top takeaways of this is lowest regional percentage of thriving employees. This is what we have in the region. Highest regional percentage of employees experiencing daily anger. Highest regional percentage of employees experiencing daily sadness. Um, I'm sure some of this doesn't come as a huge surprise, but it does. It kind of aches the heart, especially for those who really care about the workplace. Here's some more, yeah, which is basically only 30% of employees are actually engaged in the workplace. which means 70% of them say that they're not engaged in the workplace. Engaged employees are thriving at work. The ones who are 30% seem to say they're highly involved, they're enthusiastic about the workplace. They are psychological owners, drive performance and innovation, and move the organization forward. So, this is the good news, which is we have at least 30% who feel like that. Obviously, if you look at the downside, we have 70% people who clearly not thriving in the workplace. Around 17% seem to be, these are people who are engaged, the 30% people engaged. Now we're talking about the people who are thriving, and we've got 17% saying that they are thriving in the workplace. They report significantly fewer health problems, less worry, stress, sadness, loneliness, depression, and anger. And they report more of hope, happiness, energy, interest, and respect. So, for those who want to understand the difference, engaged is basically discretionary contribution at work, and thriving is basically not experiencing emotional turmoil, emotional, sort of negative emotions at work like worry, stress, sadness, and so on, and report more of happiness, energy, interest, and respect. But it's a very, very low number. At 17, we have a stellar 83% who are not experiencing this at all. About 30% experience daily stress. Respondents struggle in their present life situation, have uncertain or negative views about their future. They report more daily stress and worry about money than the thriving respondents do. Daily negative experiences, a lot of them calling out sadness and suffering. So, 39% of respondents experience sadness daily. That's almost 40% of your organization. 29% struggle with feelings of loneliness every day, which is about 30% people who don't obviously feel included. They don't feel part of a community. And, when you're feeling lonely and sad, I'm just wondering about how much contribution can you really make? This is a straight off depletion of productivity. Respondents report that their lives are miserable, have negative views on the next 5 years. They are more likely to report that they lack basics of food, shelter, more likely to have physical pain, a lot of stress, worry, sadness, anger. So, this now is sadness and loneliness that we are alluding to. 34%, this is quite stellar, if Indian employees experience daily anger. So, they're angry every day. 34% of Indian employees experience daily anger compared to 18% in China, 6% in Finland, which is ranked as the world's happiest country. So there's a lot of people who obviously have unresolved emotions and are obviously sometimes giving vent to this, sometimes just silently suffering with the anger. But in either cases, this is obviously not a great formula for productivity or contribution. Now, 49% are actively seeking a new job, whether it's a lack of growth, poor leadership, exclusion, or toxic work cultures. This is a very popular phrase on the social media as well. Indian companies are not doing enough to build environments where employees want to stay. Most organizations still treat retention as a policy checklist rather than the culture to be cultivated. So it's not like we don't get a reaction to poor retention, but no one knows what to do about it, or they don't believe this is something to do with the culture, or that they need to basically relook at their cultures, re-examine their behaviors, re-examine what kind of an ecosystem they've created within the organization that is not allowing talent to thrive. um, I want to move on to, I have more, but I'm going to pause here, right? We leave it at 49% of the respondents said that they wanted to seek another job. So I'm going to basically draw you in at this stage, Dr. Rao. I'm very interested to have your reactions. I know that you contributed to the whole idea of human resource development. You contributed to the entire, idea of basically theory why leadership in the workplace. Building leadership talent, basically creating a happy workplace. So I want to get your responses to this. I have some sort of guiding sort of areas that I want us to be able to focus on during our conversation. But of course, I'm very open to where you want to take the discussion, because really I'm interested to hear your points and then respond back. I'm really left asking the following questions: that whatever happened to bringing a skip in your step to work every day? You know what I mean? And I think a lot of us have experienced those workplaces where the most important thing that ever happened in your life is that you got a job with a fabulous organization. that cared for your learning, that saw your talent, recognized your talent, groomed you to become the best version of yourself, got yourself to do things you never imagined you could really do. And there was just so many people there who could take your hand to take you to places where you would not go to on your own. And so, you actually had a network of mentors, leave aside one person being your mentor. So I'm wondering now, is this a hiring challenge? Is it because we're not taking hiring very seriously, or because, everything's become so dispensable, if not you, then you, if not you, then you. So I'm wondering whether the whole space of talent acquisition has been not leveraged well enough. I'm asking the question around whether we take the effort to truly integrate talent, like the way in which we experienced, organizations in the 90s and the early 2000s. Coaching was a very significant part of making you meaningful and useful, contributing person in the organization. What happened to that? Because that created its own human synergies in the workplace. Is this a challenge of work allocation which is going wrong? Is it because we are allowing workplace biases to thrive, especially in the way in which rewards are decided in the workplace? So I know I'm asking, a plethora of questions, but I'm going to just pass this over to you. How are you reacting to what you're seeing here on the screen? You'll have to unmute, Dr. Rao. Yeah,
Now
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
unmuted.
Yes, you're unmuted. Yes.
First of all, Sujaya, thank you very much for the long introduction that you have given. So nice of you that you have said so many things, which now is a bit of a history. Um, um, Nice to see you all, your team. Especially nice to see Visti on my screen.
Yes, yes.
Uh, so good to have people. I'm sure a large number of our friends will be on either on LinkedIn or YouTube. So yeah, my first reaction to the data that you have sent, in fact, I've been going through some of these surveys, is one of a bit of a surprise. Why I'm surprised? In fact, I would have expected the negatives to be far lower than what the surveys indicate.
Hmm.
I would have expected at least about 60 to 70% to be happy with their jobs, engaged, um, as compared to maybe about 4 years back when we were stuck with the pandemic, and maybe 10 years back. And the reason why this surprises was, I think if you look at the last 10 years, 15 years, if you look at it, I think there has been a sea change in the HR's attitudes. HR itself has grown. Many people recognize, I think realizing this, even people like Isha Foundation, Sadhguru started focusing on human is not a resource, human is a possibility. And a whole series of programs have been run in the last 10 years. I'm sure at least about 4 to 5,000 people have gone through this to say
Hmm.
that don't treat people as numbers. People
Hmm.
are people. And many of us, including from the HRD network, and what Arvind and I have written on 30 leaders brought out the importance of being human and things like that. So when I looked at all the developments, these surveys are surprising because it is far beyond the negatives are much higher than what I thought. Now I have the following explanation for this.
Hmm.
Number one, I think what happened is post-pandemic,
Hmm.
uh, we got accustomed to a lot more flexibility at the workplace.
Hmm.
People would started enjoying flexibility. That
Hmm.
lasted for about 2 to 3 years.
Hmm.
I think the flexibility by itself can't help organization to achieve their targets.
Yes.
So suddenly organizations started trimming themselves and starting saying that, look, I have to be business driven, I have to be target driven. Therefore, the pressure went up, and the pressure obviously will. The moment you have this pressure, it comes on to the HR people. And the moment the entrepreneur, the businessman, top management exert the pressure on HR becomes number driven,
Yeah.
which is an unfortunate thing. I think what we have acquired during the pandemic, one of the biggest lessons of pandemic is that treat every human being as a human being. And one of the, I think, major innovations, which even Dave Ulrich and all of us are talking of, is to say HR's focus is not only employees. In fact, HR's focus has rarely been employees. There were more employers. If you look at 30 years back, 40 years back, uh, it's all target driven HR, business driven HR, quality driven HR, and so on. But I think we tried to shift that. And we started saying that, look, you can't be an employer champion all the time because then you can't get anything out of it. So you should be more of an employee champion. You be also a champion who can create the right society and right values where health becomes important. If the surroundings where people are employees are living are not healthy, then people will bring the ill health back into the company. Therefore, CSR and other kind of activities started. So a number of things have happened in the last 4 or 5 years. The scope of HR has gone from employee champion to customer champion to the societal champion. And of course, you can't do any of these unless you continue to earn money for the company.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
the tragedy is that all companies, any organization you take, are meant to serve people.
Hmm.
The purpose of every organization is service to people. And you can't serve people unless you have employees who are satisfied. I think everyone realizes at the intellectual level. But somewhere translating into action, people are getting short term target driven.
Hmm.
I think that is what is creating problems. Either
Hmm.
you call it toxic environment. I think these are all reflections of being
Hmm.
short term orientation.
Hmm.
So that is where HR has a very delicate role to play for them to be able to balance achieving targets, which are, I think, now monthly, daily, quarterly, to make sure that people are happy, stress is not passed on to them, top management has the right kind of styles, mental health is taken care of. I think this becomes a big challenge. I
Hmm.
don't want to fault the HR people for, I don't yet want
That's
to
right.
conclude that
Yeah.
they are paid.
Yeah.
But certainly, I think the surveys draw attention to them to say you need to do a lot more. That is what I would, that is the way I read it. So yeah, I don't know
Right.
if it makes sense.
No, it does. It does. I'm just trying to basically take the conversation to the next level. I think to your point that that there has been a lot that's on HR's plate, and a lot of expectations, and sometimes unfair expectations in terms of what all they're supposed to be sort of juggling and managing together.
Yeah,
And of course, the very delicate role in terms of being able to both serve the business as allies and also be the champion of people. I think it's very difficult to be able to ask one function to be able to do it.
yeah,
I want to really actually shift the conversation away from only what HR can do to be able to expand it to workplace culture and leadership, and the opportunities that we have across the organization. Many of it can be championed through HR for sure, and HR can bring that perspective or help with that perspective building within the organization. And I think that's again a question to be able to ask ourselves within the community whether we are doing that perspective building enough. I do believe that HR constantly has the role of a coach, even with the CEO, with the board, with everyone, to constantly give them a perspective on why we should do what we should do. And of course, influence and your ability to really build rapport with these people and get them aligned to what you want is going to be a very significant role for HR, especially in these times of constant sort of uncertainty and flux that you experience in a workplace, where beyond a point, it becomes very difficult to justify why we are changing so many times, why is this organization restructuring so many times. And I think really to be able to, again, that's building perspective, which is to take the effort to create platforms to share with people whatever is happening and why it's inevitable in the context of how the organization is basically struggling to
yeah,
compete, struggling to survive. And I think getting empathy, reverse empathy from employees is a very important role. And I think a lot of the organizations have a gap there in terms of how well we manage to get them to understand what our challenges might really be in these times. But I'm going to move this back to, when you take themes like engagement, for example, or retention. I mean, this is clearly not in HR's domain, in the sense that they might be able to these spaces through policies, processes, measure them, all of that. This is actually delivered at the place where you actually work, with the managers that you're actually working with the leaders that you're actually working with. And I wanted to try and draw you into that conversation to be able to ask, especially when you have so many people saying that they experience anger at work, for example, or sadness at work, or loneliness at work. I mean, this is all an outcome of the rhythm in which you're working together, and the fact that you can be excluded, that you can be not explained to. Many things can seem really sort of non-transparent to you. There isn't a sense of we in or community within the organization. There's silo working, which is the reason why you're suffering. There could be multiple reasons why you can't do what you're required to do at the pace at which you're required to do it, and so you can end up feeling like a failure even when you're working really hard. So
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's a lot of all of this, and I'm just wondering, because you brought in so early, the perspective on leadership capability building, leaders coach. I mean, all of these somehow have not found their way into many organizations. So I want you to come in on some of that, on what kind of when you look at leadership and you look at leadership capability building, what should organizations be really looking for? And I know my question's sounding long because I'm also trying to participate by being able to contribute my perspectives to this situation. And I'm wondering whether we are suffering the outcome of residency-based promotions, and where you have ill-prepared people who don't have the maturity really. They have the position but may not have the maturity to handle the complexities of leading in these times. So I wanted to get your perspectives in on leadership and culture in the context of what Gallup's just found out for us.
Yeah, I think that's a very, actually, you hit the nail on the head when you say top management and culture building.
Hmm.
If you go through, I mean, one thing interesting in LinkedIn, there are a few CEOs who started participating in LinkedIn. I
Hmm.
think a handful of them.
Hmm.
And if you see their posts, they
Hmm.
are very humane,
Hmm.
promoting empathy,
Hmm.
but these are just a handful.
Hmm.
I would think that they may constitute 1 or 2% of our CEOs, our top management.
Hmm.
What is happening to the rest? No,
Hmm.
it's not that LinkedIn posts are indicator, but I have a feeling a large number of our CEOs are stuck with short-term goal orientation. They are not able to think that
Hmm.
culture building and employee welfare, community welfare, or long-term investments they can make, and they are likely to give results when you are too much short-term driven.
Hmm.
Your style may end up as coercive and create quite a bit of uncomfortableness
Hmm.
because for you, your bread and butter, particularly, I can understand this comes from some of the startups who are
Hmm.
all the time I think in the dark, they're shooting in the dark, trying to, because they are after all new, but established people. I
Hmm.
still remember people like M.V. Subaya of Murugappa Group,
Hmm.
Suresh Krishna of
Hmm.
TVS, and even Dr. Krishnamurthy of SAIL. A large number of these people, and in Godrej, I think some of the people whom they have worked,
Hmm.
was so much employee welfare driven.
Hmm.
And I think their entire thought process consisted of empathetic approach that
Hmm.
get translated in their leadership styles.
Hmm.
But today, when you go to Harvard, Wharton, go to all these places, you return back with the high target orientation, strategic orientation, business orientation, and you only end up paying lip sympathy to people. I think
Hmm.
that is where I get a feeling by unconscious drive
Hmm.
for targets and short term goals of the top management. We somewhere lost the employee in spite of HR. I
Hmm.
don't say because of HR. Of
Hmm.
course, I can't but also give a role to HR. I
Hmm.
think some of the HR has been trying its best, but what happens is when the top management itself is short term goal driven, the HR person unfortunately gets quickly converted to numbers and also somewhere leaves the empathy. And if he is so too empathetic, he quits the job. And the
Hmm.
moment you have an ex HR guy, and in fact, HR people turnover has been phenomenally high if you look at
Hmm. Hmm.
phenomenally high in most of
That's
our
true.
companies.
That's true.
And a good number of them left companies and then started their own small coaching sessions and things of that kind. It'll be
Hmm.
very interesting to see the reasons why these chaps have left and what is it that they are doing. I think
Hmm.
it is lack of empathy they
Hmm.
experience in the workplace.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think they become coaches, consultants, and so on because they can, I think, at least help people.
mm,
So first blame I would like to put is on the top management.
mm,
They're not being conscious of their need to balance short term with long term and the
mm,
importance of people. I think today people come somewhere in the second line, although in public speeches we may say the people are very important for the top management. I
mm,
think you examine even some of the very famous companies who are known for starting HRD and so on. If you go through some of the reports,
mm,
pathetically low on people orientation.
mm.
And whatever they mention, they are again targets in terms of number of employees recruited, number of employees put through the induction program, number of training programs. It's only numbers.
Yeah, yeah,
It's not much about HR.
yeah.
And the culture is definitely, I think, it is nowhere near. I still remember Subhay used to say how his own grandparents, when Murugappa Group started, they
Mm,
used to have a clear HR philosophy of never to post an
mm,
employee trained by an agent who is a family member to be the
mm,
boss of the agent of the
mm,
family member. I mean, things like that. Now, there
mm,
were no HR systems in those days, but there was a HR philosophy. So was the, if you look at, I think, Birla Group, people like J.D. Birla and others about whom there are stories. Today, HR has become, unfortunately, target oriented, and it's
mm,
easy to fall into that trap.
mm.
So, on one hand, we have a few HR people who have done a marvelous job, and the statistics you presented indicate that, look, there is a lot
Yeah.
that needs to be done. In fact, I kept saying HR job is to think ahead of the CEO.
Mm,
I can say this, but will it really happen? Is a big
mm,
question.
mm,
Because HR really has a lot of knowledge, information, and so on about people who matter in creating new business, so on.
mm,
So I would tend to agree with you that there is a need for serious work with the
mm,
top management
mm,
and get them to understand how important it is to be empathetic, how important it is to spread
mm,
empathetic culture all through the company. It
mm,
is when people like working at the workplace,
mm,
they can, I think, do marvelous kind of things. And then we have enough research background to say this.
mm,
Yeah, so there's a lot of education that is required, coaching that is required, training that is required, and so
mm.
on. So this is what I think.
Right. You've mentioned empathy so many times, you know what I mean? And that, when you don't experience empathy or when you feel the organization is not empathetic. And I just wanted to draw your attention to something that Daniel Goleman alluded to. And I think I see it in action all the time, which is, he basically says that the brain circuitry for sympathy, empathy, and compassion are different. So the reason why you experience a knowing doing gap on empathy is often because you can understand empathy in the sense you can cognitively understand it, you can even emotively understand it, but that does not mean you take action to be able to be fair or to help, right? So if you take sympathy as what we call sahanubhuti and
Yeah.
empathy as samanubhuti, yeah, what you really are alluding to, what we want as action from empathy is actually karuna, which is compassion. And that by and large, what people are not experiencing and therefore reacting in the way in which they are is they're not experiencing compassion. And so, I just wanted to allude to that in the context of you having talked about empathy so many times. And I'm wondering whether this can help people to be able to think about whether they actively, are they sympathizing, are they empathizing, or are they actually moving that to action to actually help the person, which is what compassion is really all about. Normally, you ask for karuna from the Lord, from the God. And so, good way to be able to reflect on what are we converting our empathy into, right? Because only
Yeah,
to empathize is not
I
useful.
yeah, agree with you. It's a very important question.
Mm.
Yesterday, uh, we started an endowment fund as a part of the National HR Network, Uday Parikh Endowment Fund.
Okay.
And Dr. Anil Khandelwal happened to mention that in many of the talks he's giving across the country, when he mentioned about Uday Parikh, hardly a few people seem to have even heard the name, which was
Yeah, yeah.
shocking kind of a thing. Now, why I'm saying this was in 1964, this is almost about 60 years back, Uday Parikh wrote an article in Journal of Social Issues, which became a famous article where he introduced a concept called extension motivation.
Okay.
Extension motivation is you extend yourself, you make your talent available to other people. He actually borrowed from the Indian culture. In 50s, after independence, India started a series of roles called extension educator. Family planning as the extension educator, agriculture extension educator, educational extension officer. It is to say that knowledge is generated in academic institutions or in other countries. The job of the extension officer is to take the knowledge and help people to build themselves.
Hmm.
So he said, I mean, his article said that in a country, if your dependency motivation is high, you depend very much on somebody else.
Hmm.
If it is high, you cannot progress.
Hmm.
If you have to progress, your dependency, that means
Hmm.
on government or anyone else, has to be low. Achievement has to be high. And extension, which is empathy and compassion put together, is
Hmm.
very high.
Hmm.
That is what it should be.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, academics, there are very few academics I have seen who have worked on this particular concept in the last 50 years.
Hmm.
Uday himself has written quite a bit of it, and I think his articles reflect that.
And you're
And
saying it's as old as 1964, so it's a
1964,
time.
that's
Yeah.
right, 60 years. So yesterday we were saying, why don't we now pick it up? Because compassion and empathy, in my book on effective people, I
Hmm.
have picked up. In fact, I defined effective person as one who discovers his or her talent and uses it to make a difference in the lives of others. This is a very important thing. Your
Hmm.
talent is meant to help others, to make a difference in the lives of others, which
Hmm.
I required. I reviewed 70 people, doctors and social workers, everyone.
Hmm.
Compassion, I think, is very much a part of them.
Yeah.
Empathy, including civil servants, is
Yeah.
very much a part of them.
Yeah.
Or recently, I think we lost this very interesting Professor Jagdeep Chokar, who
Hmm.
started the Association for Democratic Reforms.
Hmm.
Why did he start? At the age of 60, he enrolls for a law course and he does his LLB. I'm sure you met him sometime from
Hmm.
IIM Ahmedabad. He was dean, he retired there. He and another Trilochan Shastri, who is professor of operations research, they started this. It is
Hmm.
because of their devotion for the country,
Hmm.
devotion for the people. I think it is this kind of empathy, compassion, and things of
Hmm.
that kind. So
Hmm.
I have covered some 70 such kind of people, and then empathy, compassion comes out. Now, the
Hmm.
question I always have is, I think, why can't HR people be effective? What is the purpose of their job? Their job is supposed to make a difference in the lives of others. And
Hmm.
that is the same with the CEO. Why have you started an enterprise to make a difference in the lives of people? The
Hmm.
purpose of every company is to be empathetic. I mean, it's empathy which gets you a customer. It's
Yeah.
compassion which gets you a customer. But that's where we are forgetting and we are driven by money and somewhere we are mistaking the means to be ends. Profits are only means. That is indicative of how much have you been able to cover. But that has become an end, and you have forgotten the original kind of a purpose. So
Hmm.
I think compassion, empathy is everyone, every manager, every employee, and every parent. And if you
Hmm.
are seeing if today, I'm sure you heard of some of the suicides in engineering
Yeah.
colleges
Yeah.
and even IIMs, there were some cases of suicides. If you go deeper, you will find some of these are consequences of somebody in the administration lacking empathy,
Hmm.
lacking compassion.
Hmm.
I mean, the rumors goes in one
And
of,
I dare
yeah,
say, Dr. Rao, sometimes that lack of compassion is from home.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It leads to a hell of a lot, or in the schools and colleges,
Hmm.
if you look at it. Yeah, I agree. I think that is something. But this is a $1 million question. How do we therefore keep promoting?
Hmm.
Uh, some of you are doing a good job through promoting coaching, but coaching is, I think, this is only you can only cover n number, not
Hmm.
not the entire. I think
Hmm.
it should become a part of life, part of culture,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so on. That is what I believe. I think that is how you can humanize the entire kind of a workplace.
Yeah.
Is
Can't
what I
agree
believe.
more. Can't agree more. I'm a biggest advocate of leader as coach. right from the first level. When you become a people manager is when you become a coach. And if that's not your style, then you can't continue being a leader in our organization. I think that basically, needs to be kind of the norm, and in fact the standard through which against which we evaluate how well a leader is actually sort of performing. I
Yeah.
wanted to use this conversation to ask for some solutions in terms of where can we go from here. And we've talked about compassion, we've talked about coaching. There is increasingly a huge difference between the terrain and the map in terms of new students who are coming in from the educational institutions, where constantly there's a criticism for the huge gap between what people learn in college and what they're actually expected to know as workplace skills. I wanted a quick comment from you on that. What is your being an academician yourself for such a long time? What is your reaction to this growing gap between what we teach in college, which appears that it has remained in the brick and mortar world, that academia seems to have remained in the brick and mortar world and not keeping pace with the pace of change that organizations are actually experiencing. So what's your comeback on that? Yeah, do you first of all agree with this, that there is a huge gap between what people are learning and what they expected to know at work?
Yeah, yeah, that is true. That is definitely true. There's a big gap, and it's not only academics have to be a lot more realistic and practical by interacting more and more. There are efforts that are made, but that's nowhere near what should be done. But
Hmm.
it is also true. Today's learner
Hmm.
has become a learner with a short-term view.
Hmm.
I think you can't really learn a philosophy from WhatsApp
Hmm.
and LinkedIn posts.
So for the viewers, I don't think Ganesh Naik requires an introduction. He leads the Zydus organization and has been an absolutely fabulously successful, head of the business, and has a fabulous story which you can follow on the In the Lead, where we had him, and there are lots of other videos about Ganesh on the internet. I think you missed the first part, which was the Gallup survey feedback, where it appears that 49% people want to leave their jobs. Most people believe that they're suffering in the workplace, they're struggling in the workplace. We've got a significant number that feels angry in the workplace. So our conversation on the human side of enterprise is emanating from the recent Gallup survey, which is 2025. So, what are your reactions to this? Yeah, normally on social media, the most common phrase to refer to the workplace is the toxic workplace. Describe their workplace as toxic. So, I just want to get your reactions. But Ganesh, do respond to the question, are you surprised with this data? Are you not surprised? What do you think organizations should do?
Well, it's not a question of whether I'm surprised or not, because what has happened is in the last decade, the social media has given such a fillip to freedom of speech of individuals.
Hmm.
I see on LinkedIn somebody posts something, and then immediately his first close subordinates or so would immediately get into acknowledging it and applauding it and saying fantastic, you made me see the light, I was in the dark. And then there'll be another 50 people talking in favor and then 10 against. And it goes on like an exchange of views. But life is different when you're running an organization. There are so many demands because of competition, because of so many other factors which I think anybody who is in business would know.
Hmm.
And you have to run horses for courses. There's nothing, I mean, it's not I write a book. I write a book on my experiences and in my organization, as well as if I've been changing organizations in different organizations. But
Hmm.
that is my experience. Whereas, the whole world is open out there. And I
Hmm.
mean, the last statement I heard from him is, there is so much of attrition at the HR level.
Hmm.
Well, at least in our organization, and we have 26, 27,000 employees. We have so many businesses. I don't think that is the case. If our total attrition is some 13, 14%, in the field it might be 20 to 23%. Different businesses, different functions have different rates. But I don't think HR scores very high on attrition. And
Hmm.
you see, he also made a mention of culture.
Hmm.
I mean, culture seeps down right from the promoters, if it is a promoter driven company, or from the CEO. And as is mentioned, it's not my original thing. It is behavior at scale is what culture is.
Yes. Yes, I agree. It
So
is.
in the company, if I make it a point to come on time and go on time, then that becomes the culture of the organization because I'm at the high level. People below me would dare not come to a meeting at
Yes.
9:05 if it was a meeting being called by me. And likewise on quality, etc. Today, especially in the field of pharmaceuticals, there are so many challenges in terms of quality management.
Yeah.
And that quality management is because, the person on the shop floor is the one who's really finally handling that machine. And
Yeah.
whatever we talk in boardrooms or in our executive committees, unless that thing percolates there, unless I make it a point to go regularly onto the shop floor and exchange views, etc. See, being there is what is most important.
Oh, yeah. The Gemba. Yeah.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
the
I mean,
Japanese
the
call.
Gemba,
Yeah.
Gemba is, I mean, so oft quoted. In fact, we
Mm.
have a regular evaluation of the Gemba in our monthly meetings. Gemba
Mm.
number of days, how many, what is the fallout, what is the negative, what is the positive, what is the miss out, and why it is so. And then again in Gemba, it should not become a routine. No, I go, okay, I go there at 10 o'clock, just smile at people and come back.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
have to be one, two, three, four, five things which have to be done during this Gemba walk. So it's
Yeah.
quite complicated. And, I would rather listen to somebody who has the modern 10-year experience than somebody who has been practicing HR 40, 50 years ago. Because times have
Mhm.
changed. I mean,
Yeah.
dynamics have changed, times have changed, expectations have changed.
Yes.
Gratification is instant now. Everybody wants, immediate gratification. That
Oh,
was not
yeah.
there during old times.
Yeah.
Like people
Yeah.
ask me to talk. You had asked me, but I refuse to talk now because you say in 2 years' time I'll be completing 50 years in this company and I'm an
Wow.
employee of the company. It's not that I'm related to the promoters. 50
Yeah.
years. They
Yeah.
say, man, you're crazy.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Amazing. You've had an amazing run, Ganesh. And, thank you for bringing in these perspectives. It's so important that there is an active business head, an active CEO who's actually coming in to be able to talk about that, my culture is how I behave and how my leadership behaves. And that gets scaled up because they're watching us closely. Yeah. So I think very good point on the top down. Dr. Rao is back. You want to unmute yourself, Dr. Rao?
yeah. I'm sorry. I There is a power breakdown here in Bangalore.
Oh,
At
oh,
least in
okay.
my part of the. I missed an interesting point. What is the point, Ganesh?
Yes. So Ganesh made two or three important points. I'll let him summarize for you. This is a real joy to have Ganesh Naik on this call. So
No,
Ganesh,
why
yeah.
don't you summarize,
I'll
Suja?
summarize. I'll summarize it for you. So Ganesh was actually reacting to some of what our conversations were about. And since he leads the Zydus organization, he says, there is attrition here and there, but it's not with the HR people. Because, obviously he's reacting to the fact that that itself is an indication that there is something going awry, that your HR person itself is putting down their tools and carrying on with their lives to do other things. So I think he's reacting to the fact that in Zydus they've been able to retain HR who are committed to the journey. The second thing being that your behaviors at scale is culture, and it's top down. And he said it's also the promoters, it's also the board, it's also the top leadership, it's all of them, and how are they behaving? And if they're behaving in a manner which is basically sort of humane, you sort of spark off this entire human system within the organization from top down because you behave in a particular manner, including the discipline you demonstrate, the commitment to work, the kind of the ability to adhere to change. And he also mentioned the Gemba in that context, which is that you don't just sit in your mighty tower, you actually go out to see, what the Japanese call Genshi Genbutsu, which is do you have the ability to move out and understand what's going on, in the Gemba, because that's how you get to know what's really going on. If you get off your tower, if you get off the horse, you're more likely to be able to understand what's really going on. So we will basically continue this conversation by being able to share with you a clipping that I have, which is another reason why perhaps you're getting people respond in the way in which they are at this time. I have something to show all of you. You right, and
Yeah,
then I just want to, I think we've got Visti on the call, we've got Ganesh. I think this is a fabulous get together. I'm going to try and ask everyone for at least two or three solutions that they can think of on how can we bring back the human side of enterprise. But before that, Sunit, if you can help me with the slide, I want to show you a slide and a small clipping of a video. So we stopped at this, which is 49% people want to look for another job. And no, before you go to this, don't go to that. Yeah, this one. I want to share this with you, which is this came up in one of the newspapers. This is about getting the axe. This is organizations that have at this point in time facing a job crisis. 83% of engineers left without the offer. 50% MBA holders jobless, about 25,000 people laid off this way between 23, 24, and there's some more estimates for 25 and so on. And we have been seeing this in the news. This is not to take away from any of these organizations and what their compulsions may have been. I'm just using it as a point of reference to say that you are also in times where you cannot guarantee people. I mean, even if this happens in a particular sector, the ones who are actually watching this know that they and feel that their jobs are not secure, and that at any point in time, whether it's tech that comes in, whether there's some other reason because they have new solutions on how it is that they want to go about doing things, or they don't want to operate in certain parts of the country or in certain kinds of businesses, that is likely to be as part of the churn, you can as much be vulnerable towards losing your job. And now you may argue to say that this was true even in the past, but it is definitely more accelerated in the current environment. So I want you to watch what advice is this gentleman giving everyone, all the students and young people and all the people who are working? He's alluding to the fact that AI and other kind of, technology is going to eventually render them without jobs at some point in time. And how well prepared are they? Because they must not commit themselves to one job. So I want you to now watch this.
स्टोरी ना रेडिट पे बहुत वायरल हुई। एक बंदा रिजाइन कर रहा था तो उसका मैनेजर उसको बोलता है मैं 17 साल से यहाँ पे लॉयल हूं, और फिर एकदम से डायरेक्टर और वही सीनियर मैनेजर दोनों लेड ऑफ हो जाते हैं। इसका लेसन क्या है? कॉर्पोरेट वर्ल्ड में आप कोई पेड़ नहीं हो जिसकी जड़ें मजबूत है, आप सिर्फ लेग्स हो जिनको कभी भी काटा जा सकता है। कंपनी का दोस्तों एक ही रूल है, प्रॉफिट्स फर्स्ट, और एम्प्लॉय का एक ही रूल होना चाहिए, सेल्फ ग्रोथ फर्स्ट।
Ganesh, do you want to respond to this?
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, social media has become so rampantly, being misused. I mean, it is not that this is something new. This was happening earlier also, and I can tell you because I've been there, done that, seen different phases of the organization.
Yeah.
And as competition increases, and as you have now, it's become cliched now. Speaking of machine learning and AI, I mean, things are going to get worse. And just saying, oh, the management will think only of profits, you have to think only about yourself, then you become a mercenary. And that mercenary approach, you see, now he has said that. Now 100 people are listening to it. Now in my next talk, if I'm not so mature, I might give a reference to that. And then it keeps on spreading. And then everybody adopts a mercenary mindset. So I don't care. The company, let it go to hell here. I'm interested in my thing. If I get a good offer, I'm getting 20% more, getting a higher designation, I will go there. Because the company doesn't care. So why should I care? So if you look at it so abstractly, that might be true, but that's not right, no?
Yeah.
And in a way, it's happening. As I said, instant gratification. This is the manifestation of that.
Yeah, yeah. I think not just instant gratification, it's self-preservation as well, right, Ganesh? In the sense, if you don't feel secure, and if no one's helping you with any form of perspective building to even understand what's really going on around, it's most likely that you're going to come back feeling insecure about your future. And I'm saying that there is an environment where there's no longevity that people are assured of in many ways. And I'm just trying to say, since we talked about empathy and compassion, whether we wear their hat and understand why they're reacting perhaps the way in which they are. Because I'm just saying, other than these kind of videos which fan the idea that you don't have roots in the place where you are, you should be self-preservation oriented, you should be self-protection oriented, you got to care about your own earnings, you make sure you're growing, you're basically, so leave this if this is not working, move to wherever it is that you're getting an opportunity, which can also boomerang in this environment. My purpose of putting this up was primarily to be able to allude to, on the back of the Gallup's feedback, whether we've kind of set off this downward spiral, and that whether that downward spiral is inevitable in the times in which we exist, because you're not going to not have these tough decisions. You would. And I'm saying that, in an environment like this, if people are trying to protect themselves or they're self-preservation oriented, what else would we expect from them? If we were in their positions, would we think similarly? And especially given the fact that you don't feel engaged, you're feeling sad, you're feeling.
Yeah. No. I mean, well, you can go on and on. The point is, here comes the role of HR and the top management. You have to keep people engaged.
Yeah.
On the one hand, you have the hard stuff, which is performance. You have the top line, bottom line, the deadlines, targets, etc. And on the other hand, HR has to have constant programs where the person is engaged in activities which are not directly related to financial or commercial outcomes. That's all. That's the best you can do. Rest of the things, I mean, well, if you're a listed company, you have this quarterly performance pressure, and then
Yeah.
depending on the CEO, then
Hmm.
there are certain psychological factors. Like if the
Yeah.
person has a narcissistic tendency, his behavior will be different. I mean,
Hmm.
the,
Yeah.
all this.
Yeah, it's difficult to defend in many ways. So, Dr. Rao, you wanted to come in on that on that note, which I was basically trying to share with you, which are combined with the fact that you have an environment where there are job reductions constantly, and there is high insecurity, and there is a narrative around which is don't be committed to any one organization, don't trust these guys, you may not be there long term. Think about your own career, think about your growth, and especially in an it's how easy is this trigger when you're already feeling sad. So I'm going to let
Yeah.
you respond to that.
Yeah, Surya, I have a few thoughts. Uh, Number one, I think it is very, very important that the responsibility for whatever is happening should not be merely passed on to HR or to the top management.
Hmm.
There is also a responsibility of every human being.
Hmm.
Because today we are far ahead of what we were about 10, 15 years ago.
Hmm.
I think the fact that we are all putting demands, we can talk about work from home,
Hmm.
flexibility, all these kind of things. I think our aspirations also have gone up.
Hmm.
I think we also need to learn to adjust
Hmm.
and don't expect the organizations to change totally to suit your requirements.
That is true.
This is, I think, every one of us have to realize. And coaching is not only for top management, every human being needs to be coached.
Hmm.
Particularly spiritually, you need to be coached.
Hmm.
I'm reminded of what Mahatma Gandhi said. There is enough on this earth to meet the needs of everyone, but not the greed of a few. I
Yes.
think we are probably becoming more greedy.
Hmm.
That everything organization should do, everything government should do, everything HR should do, and things like that.
Hmm.
Now, how do you bring this particular kind of a change?
Hmm.
I think it should start from school level.
Hmm.
School level, we need to relook at the education system
Hmm.
and promote some of the values that we stood for. Some schools are doing good job, but I think even they are getting target driven. I think we need to start there.
Hmm.
Second thing we need to do is education and training is not again the property of only HR. In fact,
Hmm.
I now keep saying every human being is his or her own HR manager.
Hmm.
You have to manage your HR. Don't
Hmm.
expect HR departments to manage things for you. So you have to take charge of it. Even in performance management, I'm saying you have to manage your performance. Don't expect HR and top management to manage. If you perform well, nobody can say
Hmm.
anything to you. If you perform well, if somebody says you're not doing a good job, you can quit the company. You have many more options now, even
Hmm.
before the company throws you out. So
Hmm.
I would put the onus for growth and development a lot more on people.
Hmm.
And having said this, I think HR has to totally reorient itself. I
Hmm.
would say put all that you have learned in textbooks in the last 40 to 50 years one side. I'm not saying throw it, don't throw it, keep it as a resource for you. Start rethinking about how do you induct a new employee, how do you recruit people.
Hmm.
Don't just do the traditional kind of things. I'll use AI, I'll use techniques, etc., etc. Just ask the question: how do you get the best people in your company? I think we have not applied our mind.
Hmm.
How do you get the best people? Get a recruitment consultant. This is what we think. That's not right. I think
Hmm.
use your mind, use
Hmm.
your heart, use your brain. Number
Hmm.
two, how do you induct? You have to induct every single individual. If you are a HR guy, then you will say, oh my God, I can't induct thousands of people. Okay, now take the help of other people, train them up. I think
Hmm.
here, everyone becomes an induction manager to
Hmm.
make sure that people enjoy their work, they clarified their jobs and things like that.
Hmm.
Same thing, start from the beginning. Totally relook at performance management. Let people take charge of their own performance. So
Hmm.
you only have three, four tasks. Get the right people, build
Hmm.
them up,
Hmm.
constantly monitor through coaching and
Hmm.
other kind of methods.
Hmm.
There is
Hmm.
no substitute for individual attention.
Hmm.
Can't treat people in collective manner.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, so this is a big change that is required, and
Yeah.
don't say HR managers are only. I think one for every 50. I think everyone you should make everyone is our HR manager.
Yeah.
All this is required in a AI world. It is easy. It is possible to do all this. Use AI as a technology, and I also want to appeal to people. Please understand. For every 10,000 people that you hear in the newspapers who have been thrown out, there were, I'm told, some of the companies have created livelihood for millions of people. And there are, I think there are, I'm not saying therefore you forget about, before you get anyone out of your company, you need to think a great deal about what are the alternatives, what is the way in which we can even manage the separation and things like that. So I
Mm,
think we need to have a totally relook, Sujaya.
mm,
We
mm,
would have to relook at it. We have to think. I think we should move certainly. To me, some amount of spiritual approach. What
mhm,
Gandhiji said, what Gautam Buddha said, Vivekananda said, all
mm,
these people.
mm.
Okay, I think it's very interesting that if you read some of these, it gives you a lot of solace and say, what is
Yeah,
the purpose of life? What is the purpose of an organization? What is the
yeah,
purpose of HR?
yeah.
I think we have to lift ourselves up
Mm,
because we are the fortunate lot. Many of us who are able to even converse here, we are a very, very fortunate lot. And think of all
mm,
those people who don't have enough to eat during the day.
yeah,
So I think this is something that's where compassion, all those kind of things come in. So
yeah,
compassion is only for not for you and me alone, but a number of people who can't even have this kind of a conversation.
yeah,
And that's the
yeah,
way I look at it. I think it's
yeah.
you can't solve in a
I want to recap what Dr. Rao is suggesting so that, we don't see these as, huge, hairy goals which are unattainable. They sound like something which is great philosophies, but can be actually executed at ground level. I won't leave them as principles that we can basically start upholding. And I think he's got some absolutely fabulous ideas there, which is of course, we must look closer at how we are grooming young people, as future talent. And I think he's alluding to schooling and your education system, which really needs to be more aligned to the kind of behaviors and resilience and maturity and high EQ and people orientation and the rest that you need to be able to build. Other than I'm adding to his list because he was alluding to it without calling it out like that, is critical thinking capabilities, which is, do we have those as we are basically grooming people to be able to come in? And a lot of these behaviors, particularly that we're talking about, I think the point we're making is that it's too late to be able to teach this to people when they've already been a particular way for a very long period of time. I promise you, organizations do a lot in terms of being able to coach, to be able to do, a top leadership development and the rest of that. But I think he's talking about sanskars, your values itself being aligned to a particular kind of thinking towards people, and especially your propensity for harmony, your propensity for relationship building. All of this should be early orientations that you have. It's more difficult to build them as you grow older. So it's easier to have them earlier. I think he's also alluding to the fact that who you hire is so important. I mean, this just can't be delegated. This has got to be something that you're looking at yourself. That there is, especially how you integrate that talent and make that talent meaningful within your organization, is also so key, because there is absolutely no replacement for individual attention. And I couldn't agree more. I think a lot of what we're seeing are casualties of not being able to provide individual attention to people. So that is something that has changed. And I think you really want to kind of register inclusion and the spirit of Ubuntu in the organization. It's going to be important to provide this individual attention, or light, as I like to call it, for individuals within the organization. The other part, which I think I agree completely, is be self-governed. There is no other way in times of constant uncertainty, depending on this one and that one. You got to be able to take charge of your own career, your own learning, your own performance. If the when people say, oh, they didn't have a goal sheet for the entire year, my big question is, how much of a professional are you? How did you allow yourself to go through a whole year without having goals, without having them defined somewhere? So it's not about HR's process, it's about your seriousness about your own career. So a lot of what he's saying, I completely agree. Like, take charge of your own career. We had an instance once where we had two young people who'd been hired, and because there was no space on that particular floor, they'd been put on another floor. And we had the first review. This is the time where we'd hired really large number of people, and it was the first review discussion that we had with them 3 months later, where both of them alluded to not having been given anything much to do for 3 months. And so, therefore, in the review, had nothing much to be able to report out. And we asked the question, you come from a leading B school, why would you accept if there isn't enough work? And why have you not called out for it? Why have you not called out that no one pays attention to me? Are you not interested in learning yourself? Other than your managers will be spoken to separately, we're very interested to know how interested are you in your own career. So this taking charge is extremely important. A lot of people say, oh, my career, the organization is doing something on career dialogue and the company is doing something on my career development. No, it's your career. So you take charge of it and you make sure that you're navigating your career. So I would completely agree. Don't wait for the HR manager or someone else. You got to be invested in your own career, and that's extremely important. Also, to the point
Absolutely.
that we're making on whatever other tough decisions that organizations are making, I'm going to underline one more time the need to be able to get people to see things in perspective. And one of the perspectives that Dr. Rao is sharing is there's so many new jobs getting created even every time this happens, and it happens in a cyclical manner. You'll have twice these numbers being hired shortly. So I think that's the other cycle that doesn't become apparent. So not to create a panic situation when you do see this in the news. So I think with that, this has been a wonderful conversation. And Dr. Rao, you've really kind of lifted things to the next level. Great to have, Ganesh and I joining us, which has just been such a privilege. Visti can't let you go without saying at least something. So please say, tell us what you think, in the context of bringing back the human side of enterprise, even if it's two or three ideas that you can share with the viewers.
Well, thank you. I was not prepared for this. I gained greatly from your introduction and TV's comments, which is what I came to hear. I think part of the depression and all those statistics you showed is coming out of the fact that corporates have made shareholder supremacy totally unquestionable and increasingly so over the years.
Hmm.
And the concomitant of that is shortchanging of employees, which takes three forms, and none of those are ones which an employee can think her or his way through.
Hmm.
The first is employee, which is 10,000 people out and 20,000 people out. And you rightly said, if I'm not secure, I'm not going to think about self-actualization. I have to think about my children's fees. The second is the kind of working conditions people get. We had, in some cases, suicide, some cases, deaths. And we know that working hours are going crazy. I mean, I'm not right now talking solutions, otherwise this will become my talk and not TV's. But again, if people are demanding 10 hours, 12 hours work and objecting whether you look at your wife on the weekend, then that's I don't think a fair way for people. So before we get to the stages of processes and development, these basics, and the last one, the utter unfairness of what's happening on compensation. At some levels, it is totally uncertain. At other levels, it has been stagnant in real terms for decades. And the other end of the enterprise, there are skyrocketing stock options, compensation increases. You cannot expect people to be putting the same burden in an organization and hearing that we are family. And one part of the family gets riches untold and elephants and whatever else they can buy, and the other part cannot even eat grass. So those are three basic challenges.
Good
There are
points.
ways to address them. There are ways to address the employment problem, but I think that fundamental change and how HR gets involved in changing that and working towards the aggregate happiness increase of employees, I think is the challenge before us. But again, it is Dr. Rao's words and yours, which I'm grateful for, and I'm sorry for blurting out
No,
my.
no, not at all, not at all. I think your points are very valid, and you're questioning basic philosophies, and I think those need to be sort of aligned. They need to be reflecting the compassion we've been talking about during this call, and they can't be unfair. It's like Martin Seligman, who's literally like the father of positive psychology, said that the only real measure of human endeavor, human enterprise, is a society which is full of people who have high well-being and are thriving. So if we don't have well-being, we failed as a society. And I think that is everything that Visti just pointed out is just alluding to that. So what a pleasure and privilege to have you here, Visti, and also you sharing your perspectives. Thank you, Dr. Rao. This has been fantastic. We've gone beyond time. And thank you, Chaitali, for joining, and all the others who've joined here, those who've joined on LinkedIn Live. We've really enjoyed, this conversation. I hope you have, and keep watching the space for more. We will continue this dialogue on bringing back the human side of enterprise. We haven't ended the conversation yet. We'll keep bringing in new speakers to be able to get fresh perspectives so that we continue talking till such time as we start seeing the needle move. This is an important movement that we want to see, which is how do we collectively bring back the human side of enterprise. So I think with that, thank you, Dr. Rao. Thank you, Visi, for your insights. Thank you, the team, Sunita and Gaurav, for having organized this. And we'll see you again on another Talking Points. Thank you, Dr. Rao.
Thank
Such a
you. Thank you,
pleasure to have you.
Sujaya.
Thank you,
Take care.
Sujaya.
All right. Take care. Bye bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye bye.